Hello, welcome to a beginner's guide to Warsim, and this is combat and warfare. Now, obviously, the game is called Warsim, so there is a lot of war things in this game. Now, we're not going to touch too much on mercenaries, because there is another episode where we're going to cover that. So what we'll do instead is find, I guess we'll just attack an enemy. So in this case, we'll attack the bandit horde. Now, there are a few things to know about combat in Warsim. Generally speaking, there are times to do it and times not to do it. And you can find out the strength of your enemies by using diplomacy and looking at how many troops they've got. But if not, you can use the I need more information, and your diplomat is able to help you, give you some information. I'm able to do this attack right now with my general, Gorin Pikener, at the top, but if you fire your general, a generic soldier will do it, and you will have slightly worse odds at fighting. So you'll see that in this instance, I've got quite a few different options for how I fight. Now I can choose to skirmish, which is the safest option with the least weight put against my troops. You would choose a skirmish if, for example, you're trying to reduce the total number of enemies in your enemy kingdom or enemy faction before you really start trying to cut them down and take their land. Perhaps your attempts to invade them are failed because they have too many men. Well, skirmishes will weaken them. When you attack an enemy, in all different versions except for total invasion, you are facing a fragment of their army. So, for example, if you are fighting a group of, I don't know, let's say 1,000 goblins and they have 10 lands, you will find 100 goblins protecting each land during a skirmish, a raid, or an invasion. A total invasion, however, means that you attack all 10 lands and face all 1,000 goblins. In the late game, this is a very good way to grow your empire very fast. However, it can be a quick doom if you're fighting against an enemy whose total force you cannot overcome. Raiding is another different way of attacking. It's not as safe as a skirmish, which means there is a higher odds of death for your troops, but it's not as bad as an invasion. Raiding helps you take gold from your enemy. So it's the same way as troops. The total gold they have is divided by their lands, and you take it along with some other potential little loot. So for example, again, 10 lands for a Goblin Kingdom, and they've got 10,000 gold. You'll take 1,000 gold every time you raid. But if you keep attacking them and you cut them down to one final land and you raid that, you will take every penny, which is why those final raids are worth so much. Invasion is the main way that you progress in the game, and it's definitely something that you need to lean on. Invasion is how you take territories from your enemy, and once they've got no territories, they cease to exist. However, invasion is the toughest of all the fighting, so you don't want to do that if you don't think you can. And then finally, we've got total invasion, this option in red. This is only available because my kingdom is 50 lands or bigger. In most games, you don't see that until much, much later in the game, towards the end, but it is a godsend when you get to that point, because you don't have to whittle an enemy kingdom down, but can attack them all at once. So in this case, I'm going to do an invasion, and I'm going to show you different parts of it. So the options here depend on the skill of your general. I have the option to send half my troops, or half my troops but no peasant. I would have the option to send a quarter as well if he was more skilled, but he's not. So the reason why you might not want to send your peasants into combat is that your peasants work on the farms earning harvest income, and the more of those that are dead, the less money you make in the following turn. So I'll send everyone but my peasants. Now in this case, I have some champions that I've recruited in my game world. I have all my 5 champion slots full, so I have the option to use all of them. So in this case, I'm going to use every single one of my individual champions. Now I could say send both. And now the general comes back and says, okay, do you want to watch the fight? Or do you want to just hear about it afterwards? Or even not hear about it at all? So in this case, yes, I want to see the fight. And now finally the weather. Now the weather could be a lot of different things. There are, I believe, 18 different types of weather and 10 different kinds of rare variant weather, which can be difficult and different. So there are some weather's good, some weather's are bad. If you're fighting against fire elves and you get a rainy weather, it's the perfect time to fight them. If you're fighting snow elves during a snowstorm, maybe try and avoid the snowstorm because they're going to be a very buffed enemy. But typically, the main thing that weather means is it dictates the kind of weather events you'll have. If you fight during the rain, there could be a mudslide that crushes your men. If you fight during a heat storm, your enemy could collapse. It'll affect you both equally, but it can also affect one of you more than the other at random. So there's no real telling. So in this case, we're going to wait a while actually and see if we can get a different weather. Right now it's a cloudy night sky. And yeah, it's still the same really. No clouds, but still late night. So we have an interesting intro event and random events that happen during battle. There are multiple different events that can occur during a battle. You've got random events, you've got combat events, which is where the two armies actually clash and are rolling essentially a die of their force size against each other. And then you've got weather events, and then your heroes also having events. So we'll see what we can get. So this is pretty disastrous actually, and it's also quite rare. But our champion, Torek, the Conqueror of the Tomb of Emperor Lasaro, is dead. But he did manage to take down 5 bandits in the process, so that's good. And we've got another champion here who's done his little champion event. And now we see a normal battle event. So quite equal there, actually. Another random event. And then we go, we're doing pretty good. And we're keeping it up. Keeping up the momentum, and it swung back against us, and we're not doing so good anymore. And we've got one of our champions, Beep. I will bleed you like a pig. Yeah, sure you will. And we're down. So, this is what happens when you lose a battle and you've got 4 champions remaining. Or any champions remaining, basically. You have the option to tell them to fight to death, or to back off. Now, for the sake of the tutorial, for the sake of this little demo, I'm going to show you the fight to the death. No, Beep. And that's the end of that. So after the battle is over, you get your relation changes with the faction in question. So we actually lose some public opinion with our own kingdom because we lost, but we don't lose too much because we did lose to a larger force, so it's seen as sort of forgivable. But we do lose 8 relation to the bandits. Now you might be like, why does that matter? Well, factions choose who they attack depending on their relations. So the lower your relation is, the more likely you are to become their target, which is why sometimes not fighting is the best strategy while you let other enemies piss each other off. Now we also get the chance to view a battle report. And there's also eggheads who give you reports based on various stats of the battle. Now I would show you that, but I stupidly chose to execute one of them for fun, and now I don't have that option anymore, but in your game you probably will. So we can view the battle report, see the totals of losses, so we lost a lot more than they did. We can see a breakdown of exactly what died on our side and exactly what died on theirs. And that's the end of the battle. And then we can see it here in our report that Pindar attempted to invade the lands of the bandits but failed. And we see all the other stuff that's going on. So that is a general dip into the battle and the combat situation. Now the main thing you want to focus on is having strong units or a large quantity of not strong units, but in total the strength is the thing that matters. So peasants will have a strength of 50. They're a unit that you generally don't want to expend too much, but it's worth having them sometimes as a swarming force. You don't want to use them too much because they are a good money maker, so it can be good to save them, making you the money to keep your war machine running. Soldiers have 100 strength, knights have 150, goblins have 50, and then you have bandits with, I think, 75 or something like that, and they sort of all vary, but you can see them in the troop trees in-game. There are also going to be always a revolving cast of troops for the different kingdoms in your world. It's always worth knowing, A, who you're fighting, and in the case that you're able to get some of them in your army, it's good to know who's best to have on side. So that is a general brief dip into the warfare system of Warsim. But if you have any questions, anything you've missed, we have a very active Discord, and I'm always around to answer questions as well, so drop a comment here on YouTube or on our Reddit or Discord or basically anywhere else. I'm probably going to find it somewhere, even if you mail it using a pigeon carrier. We'll figure it out. But thank you very much for watching. This has been another Warsim tutorial, a Warsim beginner's guide, and keep an eye out for some more in the future.